So we did the Western theories on family, right? Yesterday, what were those theories? The Parsons and Goudet, right? We have done earlier other theories as well, but this one I thought of giving in detail, okay? Due to its relevance to the Indian society. Now we have to do, first one is the Ahimsa, among Indian, Ahimsa, which is the most popular and most important, okay? Second one we would be doing M.N. Srinivas. Third one that we would be doing would be I.P. Desai, okay? Okay, so first let's do the Ahimsa one. Okay. So there has been, first of all, multiple debates, okay? This debate that is what you call whether in India it is joint family or it is nuclear family, or is the joint family disintegrating? Something on that line there has been a regular debate, okay? What are the some of the reasons why which this debate arised is that there is a guy called Gate. He was the census commissioner, okay? Census commissioner. So he, see, what exactly our rituals always, just keep on writing, okay? I'm not going to take a note on. I'm just going to explain the Ahimsa one. The rituals have always prescribed for what they have. The rituals have always glorified the joint family, okay? And when this census commissioner, I believe it was in 1911, the census of 1911, this census commissioner saw that the average size of family was somewhere around 4.1, okay? So basically he thinks that, okay, so what is happening? If joint family is what it is actually celebrated, what it is glorified, then how come this, what you call average family size is so small? Okay, so with this he is thinking that due to the westernization and industrialization, even in India also, what we call predominance of joint families decreasing, okay? So he would be coming to such a conclusion. I will give you more numbers, just a second, let me check whether the number is correct or not. Okay, so he came with this number of 4.9 in 1911, okay? So this has been countered by this, what we call another census figures, such as, I'm going to quote the census figure, just a second. And 1991, this was 4.8 and this was 5.1, okay? So basically, according to Gate, what we call joint family is disintegrated to nuclear family with westernization. But if we look at other census figures, that is the census average family size. This is what we are talking about, is the average family size, okay? So the average family size in 1911 was 4.9, which is in contradictory with the ritual, what exactly prescribed by the rituals, and ritual would always glorify or prescribe joint family. Henceforth, he is concluding that joint family is disintegrating. When he but this, what you call what Gate has said could be easily contradicted by the figure when we go ahead with the other census figure. In 1951, it was average size of the family as 4.8. In 1991, it was 5.1. Which is actually having a, what we call, if trajectory was this, so this is showing an opposite trajectory, right? So with this we could just contradict what Gate has observed, okay? And now we are going to do the Ahimsa one, okay? Okay, so now we are going to you're doing the theory of A.M. Shah. Just keep on writing whatever I'm saying, whatever you actually understand. See, according to A.M. Shah, a family could be joint or nuclear depending upon the life cycle of the family, depending upon the stage of life cycle of family, stage in life cycle of family. Okay, so he says a family could be joint, a family could be nuclear. That would depend upon the stage in the life cycle of the family. At what stage this, you know what you call, he would be going ahead with a cyclical theory in which families could be joint and families could be nuclear. This is the life cycle of the family. When it would become joint, such as birth, okay, marriage. These are the instances where a family might become joint. Then there are instances of death and even marriage again. For example, if it is a new local residence, it might turn the family of, see, this is a marriage in the case of Petri local, okay, and this in the case of new local residence. Okay, I hope everyone is following this, right? Family could become joint, family could become nuclear, quite depending upon the stage of life cycle in the family. And some of the instances where family is becoming joint could be instance of birth, could be instance of marriage, and then some instance where it would be turning into nuclear would be instance of death and instance of marriage where it is a new local residence. Okay, just note it down, and now I'm going to dictate. Should I start? Okay. The pattern of developmental process. It's A.M. Shah. A.M. Shah, we are just continuing, or we are writing a short note on A.M. Shah theory on family. The pattern of developmental process in each society. The pattern of developmental process in each society is affected by three major factors. Okay, write down the first factor. So basically it is going to talk about which are the factors which is going to turn joint into nuclear and nuclear into joint. Okay, that is what we are going to write. The first factor is demographic factor. You can just write down first demographic factor. First factor is demographic factor, which not only includes demographic factor, which not only includes the phenomena of birth, which not only includes the phenomena of birth, adulthood, phenomena of birth, adulthood and death, birth, adulthood and death, but also the sex and number of members, but also the sex and the number of members, but also the sex and number of members, but also the sex and number of members. While this phenomena, after full stop, while this phenomena are demographic in origin, phenomena are demographic in origin, they are social in operation. What exactly this statement means is that, okay, so birth, death and everything could be demography, right? But you should make a distinction based on the sex and number. Okay, how we are going to make a distinction? For example, if the death of a girl child is happening, that is not causing death of a what you call adult girl, woman who has already married off, that won't make the family, that would not make any change in the form of family. I hope everyone is getting right, because she would be married off and she is not considered then the part of the family, right? So that is why it would be what we call demographic factor could depend upon the sex and number. Okay, right on the second factor. The second factor is the series of explicitly stated norms. Series of explicitly stated norms. Series of explicitly stated norms regarding the residence of explicitly stated norms regarding the residence of various relatives in a household. Residence of various relatives in a household. Residence of various relatives in a household. Okay, next factor is, the third is a pattern of interpersonal relations. The pattern of interpersonal relations. The pattern of interpersonal relations in a household. Interpersonal relation in a household. Largely dependent on the norms or code, dependent on the norms or code of proper conduct, attached to the kinship relationship in the household. Kinship relationship in the household. Okay, so now we are going to talk about what M.N. Srinivas has said. Okay. Oh, AIMSA, you have to write one more part in AIMSA, just a second. He has also studied the what we call degree of jointness, something on that line. Yeah, AIMSA in his study of Gujarat village, write down his study. AIMSA in his study of Gujarat village, in 1972, observed that in the last 100 years, the extent of jointness of family in the northern plain, the extent of jointness of family in the northern plain, have remained stagnant in the northern plain, have remained stagnant and less than 10%. Stagnant and less than 10%. Joint family system, after full stop, has been stagnant and less than 10%. Joint family system has been predominant among the land owning caste. Okay. Now we are going to do the M.N. Srinivas one. See, ultimately, if you would be asking for a conclusion whether it is India family is predominantly joint or what we call nuclear, it would be joint only in 10%. I believe in multiple, what we call reports and multiple studies, 10% has been the ballpark figure for the percentage of family, organization being joint, and rest has been always nuclear. Okay. So what exactly M.N. Srinivas? M.N. Srinivas gives the theory of functionally joint and functionally nuclear. Okay, so basically he is not talking about the structure of the family. He is not taking care of the structure of the family. He talks that a family could be functionally joint or functionally nuclear. Okay, so M.N. Srinivas, you could just write down. According to M.N. Srinivas, a family could be joint or nuclear based on the function performed by it. So he does not take care of the structure dimension. He is not talking okay, 3 generations should live together, then only it is what we call joint family. So he's not taking care of the structure part. He's more talking about how functionally joint. So now I'm going to give you instances when a family become functionally joint and when example. Okay, one example of each. One example, for example, there is a proper, what we call household. Okay, it is divided into 4 different what we call four, room is there with separate their own kitchen and everything. Okay, now one family same, they are sibling 1 2 3 4 with each of their families living. Okay, this family would become functionally joint in terms of holding of property. Okay, holding of ancestral property, to be better, ancestral property, or it could be functionally joint in instance of what you call some conflict with rest of the society. Okay, so if someone has a fight, then entire 4 brothers will show up. So it is an instance of functionally joint. Although they are living separately, everyone is living separately, everyone has their own independent kitchen. Okay, and they might be even involved in different work, but they are functionally joint in case of this too, or even in case of rituals. Some of the rituals such as marriage, last rites, all these cases they could come together and act as a joint family. Okay, only in functional perspective. Again, I'm not talking about the structural perspective. So instances when a family which has been living separately becomes joint has been noted down here. Okay. In this you could just write in instances where family is functionally nuclear. Instances would include living in separate home living in separate home with separate kitchen. See, the term separate kitchen is pretty much important because that is a definition of household, okay? That's why I'm so much emphasizing on the separate kitchen aspects as well. Separate home and separate kitchen, and going for different occupation. And going for different occupation. If there is more instances, you could generate on their own, okay? The main idea of this is that it is not based on a structure that we define joint or what we call nuclear family. It is based on the function we define joint or nuclear family, okay? So that is the entire what we call crux of M.N. Srinivas idea of functionally joint and functionally nuclear. Now third is the I.P. Desai. See, I.P. Desai is going to emphasize on the extent of jointness. Extent of jointness. And here jointness would be referring to the depth in bond of parent children or children children. Parent children or among children. Again, it is not something in the structural perspective. It doesn't matter whether you are living together or not. It depends upon how much you have depth in relationship, how close you are with your, what you call, how close the parents and children are, and how close the children are among themselves. That would define the, what we call, either families joint or nuclear, okay? I believe just you can write down the extent of, I.P. Desai has defined, I.P. Desai has characterized a family as joint or nuclear. Just write down a single line. I.P. Desai has characterized a family as joint or nuclear based on the extent of jointness. Based on the extent of jointness. Jointness here referred to the depth. Jointness here refers to the depth in bond shared between. Jointness here refers to depth in bond shared between parents, children, and among children themselves. Okay, now we are going to write just a short, what you call, notes, which is pretty much important, which is talking about diversity in joint family in India. You can just write diversity in joint family in India. In India, joint family are not uniform. In India, joint family are not uniform. And the matter of jointness and the degree of jointness, can be studied in different dimension. Can be studied in different dimension. studied or examined in different dimension. Such dimensions are starting from number 1, depth of generation. Number 1 point is depth of generation. Number 2, holding properties in common. Depth in generation, holding properties in common. Okay, you guys have to do a to-do also, okay? You have to write a short notes on Hindu undivided family. Just write it down. It's a to-do exercise, just anywhere, just write it down. You have to write on your own, write a short note on Hindu undivided family. It might seem a pretty simple concept, but it is a bit controversial, so you guys have to go through it really well, okay? It's an important topic, might come. Especially when it comes to always, whenever there is a tax reform, they are asked, right? So people who have been filing tax might understand. Depth of generation, after that it is holding properties in common. Number 3 is common functional or occupational activity. Common functional or occupational activity. Third dimension is common functional or occupational activities. Fourth dimension is ritual and ceremonial activities. Ritual and ceremonial activities. Now I'm going to define the joint family. Just write down. Joint family is a group consisting of Joint family is a group consisting of Joint family is a group consisting of 3 to 4 generation. See, it's an ideal type of joint family, okay? We are defining an ideal type of joint family because in reality it is going to be not uniform, right? That is what we have written. So please, have that in mind, that we are only writing about an ideal type. Consisting of 3 to 4 generation living together under one roof. Living together under one roof. In exam, if I was writing this, joint family, then I would have written, it's an ideal type construction as suggested by Weber. Only to showcase that I am using a thinker, unnecessarily, okay? But I do that, I have no shame in it. Living together under one roof, after comma, eating food cooked at one kitchen. Eating food cooked at one kitchen. Sorry? Basically, see, any, any definition that I'm writing and it is too much ideal, or it might be, it might be showcasing some variation in actual world, then I would be just writing in bracket that it is an ideal type construct as, done by Weber, in bracket, okay? Only to showcase that it's you would have started, writing this in that format, an ideal joint family is, but why we should write it? We are not writing English literature, right? We are a sociology student, so we are going to use the term ideal type construct, okay? That is what I do. It's not that much. It's a make-believe game, right? Holding property in common. Holding property in common. Pooling income in a common fund. Holding property in common. Pooling income in a common fund. Pooling income in a common fund. In a common fund. Incurring expenses from the same fund. Incurring expenses from the same fund. incurring expenses from the same fund, participating in common family worship, participating in common family worship, participating in common family worship, and working under the authority of senior most male members, and working under the authority of senior most male members. Okay, so I believe with this we have completed the family part, all of it. Okay, if we have sufficient thinkers also even to write what we call the answers. Okay, now we are going to do the tribal communities in India, that part, okay? Write down the question. We are going to study tribal communities. It's a new topic. Sociological explanation of, write down a sociological explanation of, tribal, write down nahi likhna. Sociological explanation of tribal identity. Just struck down the write down part. Sociological explanation of tribal identity is incomplete without any reference to the cultural and material dimension, is incomplete without any reference to the cultural and material dimension of Adivasi consciousness. Explain the sociology, after full stop, explain the sociological merit of this statement. Okay, now we are going to quickly do the entire tribal one. Okay, the various things that we have to. Now we are doing the background part. Okay, the background part. We would be attempting this question through whatever we are going to learn in the background. The first one is definition. Okay, just start with topics such as definition, tribal definition through, as given by various other articles. You know what you call as given by various other thinkers. Just a second. Yes, write down the first one, and which is the one which you are going to use everywhere is the Surjit Sinha. Okay, it is. I found it the most appropriate one. Tribe is ideally defined. Surjit Sinha. Surjit Sinha has defined the tribe. Tribe is ideally defined. Tribe is ideally defined in terms of its isolation. In terms of its isolation. In terms of its isolation from the networks of social relations. From the networks of social relations. From the networks of social relation and cultural communication. And cultural communication of the centers of civilization. Of the centers of civilization. Write on the second one, which is not that much useful, but is still the Evans-Pritchard one. Evans-Pritchard. Evans-Pritchard is a thinker. Comes in the first paper. Tribals are relatively isolated. Tribals are relatively isolated, closed groups, relatively isolated, closed groups, forming homogeneous units, isolated closed group, forming homogeneous units of production and consumption. Of production and consumption. The third one is Bailey, which are usually used in the conclusion part, okay? Whatever this guy is going to say, used to come in my conclusion. The tribes and caste continuum, okay? His popular is called as the Bailey is known to form a known to construct the tribes caste continuum. Okay? Just a small exercise. If you remember, we did a pattern variable also, right? Pattern variable we did of Parson. So pattern variable by Parson would be saying that the guy, whoever has to take a decision, has to resolve the conflict, okay, among two extreme. It could be ascriptive versus achieved, okay. One of the dilemma I am just saying, but ascriptive and achieved, what he actually would be doing would be somewhere in between. It could be here, it could be here, anywhere, right? So again, in this also a continuum is being what we call constructed. Okay, I hope everyone is getting. It is not discrete choice to be made. It is a choice to be made in between it. That's why a continuum. Similarly, tribes and caste continuum is similarly constructed. Caste on one hand and tribes on the other hand. There would be some features of this, but actual, in actual, what we call, in actual life, in actual scenario, it would be existing in somewhere in between. Okay, just write it down. Only solution to the problem of Bailey, what exactly he has said, only solution to the problem of definition of tribes Definition of tribes is to conceive a problem of definition of tribes is to conceive a continuum of caste and tribe. Continuum of caste and tribe. Continuum of caste and tribes. After full stop, the tribes are segmentary. After full stop, the tribes are segmentary, egalitarian system. The tribes are segmentary, egalitarian system. And are not mutually interdependent. Tribes are segmentary egalitarian system and are not mutually interdependent. Caste, on the other hand, have organic solidarity. See here, the organic solidarity is referring to the Jajmani system that is existing. Okay. After full stop, tribes have direct access to land. Tribes have direct access to land. Tribes have direct access to land. And no intermediary is involved between them and land. And no intermediary is involved between them and land. And no intermediary is involved between them and land. Okay. So that is what we call the first, what we call background. The second is problem with definition. Now we are going to talk about what are the problems that arise when we define a tribe. Problem with definition. Okay, we are going to study multiple topics in the background. The second one is problem with definition of tribes. Usually tribal identity is related to, number one, negative connotation. Is related to negative connotation. Number one, like there are multiple what we call definitional problem. The first one we are going to talk about is the negative connotation. Okay, what they actually are not, that is what they are said to be. They would be considered as primitive. But we have seen in the case of Andaman and Nicobar, when the tsunami came, they were the first one to get prepared and be safe, right? On the other hand, the coast of Chennai was devastated, right? So they were considered primitive. They might be considered someone who are not, what we call primitive, again in technology terms, in everything, in those terms. There are other also misconstruction, okay, which I am not mentioning. I believe pretty much is in popular, what we call movies and films. That is how they have been painted. Okay, so I believe people should be taking the cue. Okay, so that has been something had been done to the tribal identity. The second one is homogeneous identity. Usually related to homogeneous identity. And which is again not correct because of the diversity existing in the form of their race, language, their rituals. You could just write, which is again not incorrect, because of the diversity existing among tribals. In terms of Number one, race. You can A, B, whatever you can use. Race, geographical location, population. I have to say the population becomes a diversity criteria. Why? Because there are some tribes with 4 lakhs population. There are some tribes with only 50 population. Too much of a diversity, okay? What are the other areas of diversity? Can anyone help me in? Language, rituals, okay? Exactly, we are not going to use the term religion, okay? Language, rituals. Even with respect to impact of modernization also, they are differently placed, right? In terms of impact of modernization also, they are differently placed. Some of the tribes are pretty much modernized, pretty much integrated to our society very well. On the other hand, there are pretty much tribes which are not at all integrated, okay? So I believe we could just come up with, write down in bracket, you have a to-do question to write, which is a previous year question. Write short notes on, the question is, write short notes on unity and diversity. Write short notes on unity and diversity among tribes in India. Among the tribes in India. Okay, it's a to do which you have to do. Okay. So, the third problem with identity. We are still continuing the problems with the identity. We have done 1, 2, and now we are third. Is a given identity rather than a self-chosen one. Is a given identity. The tribal identity is a given identity. Is a given identity rather than a self-chosen one. Okay. In terms of the third thing that I wanted to cover was diversity, which we have already covered, right? We have talked about 4 points and more we are going to talk in the to-do part. Then next that thing that we actually should be knowing is the colonial policy. Colonial tribal policy. When I was preparing on my own, I actually didn't know which standard books to refer to. I mean, I was also confused between the most popular confusion of student is old NCERT or new NCERT. Okay, so I actually ended up studying the new NCERT in the first. Okay, modern India I studied. It was a pretty good actually exercise that I did because it actually helped me. Because in mains most of the time, the new NCERT is a subaltern perspective. Mains would be asking you a question on analysis, and that might even help you. The modern India only, very thin book of new, what you call modern India when it comes to new NCERT. Okay, so in that I would like to just talk about Santhal rebellion, because it has been discussed very much. I'm just going to describe it. You guys have to read it on your own. Okay, please do not note it down. It's pretty much basic. One can just What exactly was the Santhal rebellion? It came in 1856, right? Okay, Santhal is a area, and at that time it was under Bhagalpur. Bhagalpur division. The district division is there, so it was under this division. Okay. What exactly happened in the Santhal rebellion is that there was an area, later on, carved out as Chota Nagpur, That area was forested. I'm just going to tell you the story, The tribals were already living here, The Pahadiyas were living here, Which tribal was living here previously? The Pahadiyas. The Pahadiyas were the tribals who were living here, but they were not, used to cultivation. Okay, they were the people who were only, what we call agriculture make. They were the one who would be going for collection of crops and everything. एक होता है ना gatherers, I believe. They were coming in the gatherers part. Okay, so they were not used to cultivating crops in the normal farming method. Okay, the normal, what we call civilization. One of the hallmark of civilization has been agriculture, right? So that kind of agriculture they were not practicing. Okay, so this colonial administration, what they did is that they started bringing Santals. Santals were not originally from this area, Chota Nagpur. Okay, they were asked to come to this place. Why they were asked? They were asked because they were used to cultivation. They were used to plow and what you call digging and what you call clearing forest and going for cultivation. So that's why they were brought. I hope you why I'm giving so much emphasis on this process, because what is happening, these Pahadias are now what you call going more inside the hills. They are pushed inside the hills. The colonial administration pushing them towards a narrower area, and they are bringing the Santhal, which is another tribe which is accustomed to the new form of agriculture. Okay, so two effects simultaneously is happening. Just think, they are both tribals, but the impact on both of them are different. That's why I'm just mentioning both the tribes. Okay, so that impacts difference actually is a very wonderful thing to note. So they started what we call cultivating here, and soon that area spread across 10,000 of acres. Like very big areas were started. Now they are cultivating it. Okay, they wanted to call it Damin-e-Ko. Okay, it is now their sacred land. Okay, sacred land where they have what you call cultivation of their own. Okay, when that was happening, after this the colonial administration, as well as there are money lenders as well. Okay, money lenders are supported by the colonial administration. These people, okay, now they started their usual method, exorbitant rent, right? Whatever you produce, you have to pay a share of it to the colonial government. That started, and due to that, these money lenders also, now this is becoming a vicious cycle. These people would be asking for some rent. They people are not able to pay it. They would be taking money from money lender. So these two people, ultimately what is happening is that they started capturing their land. So you make a place your sacred land with your sweat and blood. And now things that was 10,000 acres started shrinking. And that is the entire reason, this Santhal rebellion took place, to reclaim what they exactly called as their sacred land. Okay, so that was the entire story of Santhal rebellion, and that is where the very new policy of government starts. Okay, that is where our popular friend called Warrior Elwin will come. Okay, so Warrior Elwin will say that entire tribal problem has one and only one root cause. What is that root cause? Tribal land should not be alienated from, tribals should not be alienated from their land at any cost. And how is that possible? By carving out a separate area for them. The national park approach. Right? That is a popular national park approach in which they would be forced into isolation, or at least they would be allowed to remain in isolation with no intermediary between land and tribals. So that is the entire Warrior Elwin, and that is the entire tribal. So colonial policy is changing. It is not, what you call, it is not static. So that's why I gave this idea of colonial policy. So you just have to write the Warrior Elwin part. Warrior Elwin and his national park approach of, which guided the entire colonial policy. Okay. Then the entire idea of scheduled area, carving out all this came. Okay. Just write down in colonial policy. The works of Warrior Elwin. In colonial policy, just write down the works of Warrior Elwin. Warrior Elwin is from UK, right? The works of Warrior Elwin. Ultimately, he married a girl from Gond, I believe, or Beal, something on that line. It happens, and then he marries again. Okay, but anyways, that's totally fine. The work of Warrior Elwin on tribal policy became the framework of on tribal problem, actually just write tribal problem, not policy, problem, became the framework of colonial policy towards tribal, became the framework of colonial policy, became the framework of colonial policy towards tribals. After full stop, according to Verrier Elwin, or according to Elwin, for interview you have to read his entire book, The Philosophy of NEFA. I'm from Arunachal Pradesh, so I have to read his entire book, okay? Very thin, and sometimes I read also. According to Elwin, the entire tribal problem could be narrowed down to alienation of tribals from their land. Alienation of tribals from their land. The modern form of economy, if imposed, the modern form of economy, if imposed on a tribal society, is bound to develop an intermediary between tribals and their land. Henceforth, a national park scheme in which tribals were restricted to scheduled areas became the popular colonial policy. Okay. Now next topic that we have to do, we are going to complete this tribal policy, the tribal entirely. So you have to write theory of tribal development. Theories of tribal development. The next topic in tribal communities. Theories of tribal development. The first theory is, again I'm just going to first explain. The first theory is the isolationist approach as given by Elwin himself. Okay. The second one is assimilist approach by Gurye. Gurye was one of the supporter. He never gave such a thing, but he was a supporter. And the third one is integration by Nehru and Elwin, right? The entire Nehru-Elwin theory of where Panchshil, the tribal Panchshil, comes into play. The tribal Panchshil. Okay, so there are three approaches when it comes to tribal development. Okay, and in this, one another part that exactly would be your to do, pretty much easy, is the PVTG. That one you have to do on your own. Get ready with a short note on this, and please refer to Wikaspedia for this. Okay, whenever you get a chance, if you are getting what we call some content from Wikaspedia, go for it, because it is maintained by Indian Economic Service people. Okay, it's a very wonderful website. And there would be email also of those people who have written, so you could mail them for more. Okay, you can mail me also. I am also not less. The PVTG, please be ready with it. It's an important topic. Okay, I would have given that, but I have more topics to complete. That's why I felt short notes. Why? Okay, so three approaches. First is isolationist, which we'll be writing from the discussion that we did earlier, right? First one, it says no need to actually just let them be whatever they are. We don't actually would be interfering. Second is the assimilist. Okay, so Ghuria would be always saying that tribes are backward Hindus, right? That is his popular, what we call statement. Tribes are backward Hindus, so they should be actually what we call integrated. They should be assimilated in the Hinduism. They should get assimilated in the Hindu one. So assimilation is loss of culture and identity. Okay, this process would be leading to loss of culture and identity for sure. Okay, and the third one is the middle path of tribal integration. Okay, and the middle path of tribal integration was proposed in the popular book Philosophy for Nefa by Nehru and Elwin, and in that the tribal Panchshil is the go ahead. Whenever a question comes to approaches of tribal development, you are going to conclude it on tribal Panchshil line only. Okay, and you guys, if you get time, do I will just share, if I will share the forward in the channel for sure, but if I miss it, do read the forward of this book. This Philosophy for Nefa ka forward was written by JLN himself. It's a wonderful statement, really wonderful. I mean, you just understand how well acumen that person was. Okay, I believe tribal Panchshil is also something pretty much what you call static thing. One could just get it from internet or any source. Okay, I should not be dictating, right? Tribal Panchshil pretty much. Okay, the next thing that you have to do is the constitutional provision on tribals, that you have to do on your own. Again, it's GS static part, but it is important that you are ready, because question would be directly coming, such as short notes on the constitutional provision, something on that line it will be coming. So be ready with the constitutional provision. Okay, it will start from that Article 15 itself, in which a special provision are there, right? So do not miss it. Do not jump directly to Schedule 6 and Schedule 5. Even Article 15 and all those things would also be it is important from both perspectives. Means as well as even in interview direct question would be asked the constitutional provision when it comes to tribal communities. The next is tribal movement. See, one of the tribal movement I just told you pretty much in short. We are going to see Surjit Sinha. Just write down tribal movement. All these are self-explanatory. Surjit Sinha would be giving 5-fold classification for tribal movement. Okay, 5-fold classification. Just note it down. Can be utilized whenever a question is asked. Okay. Number 1 is ethnic rebellion movement. Tribal movement. Surjit Sinha has given 5-fold classification of tribal movement. The first one is ethnic rebellious movement. Ethnic rebellious movement. Okay. Again, it is kind of a ideal type. So you might be finding, all sets of 5 in one single moment. Okay, it would be quite dependent upon how much you are knowing which are the areas touched by a single moment. Okay. Second one is reform movement. Reform movement. After ethnic rebellious movement, it is the reform movement. Then it is the political movement. Political movement. The fifth type is secessionist movement. Secessionist. One asking for secession. Secessionist movement. And the fifth type is agrarian unrest. Agrarian unrest or agrarian unrest. Okay, so these are the types of movement that was given by Surjit Sinha. Most of the theory that I actually wanted to cover has been finished. Now we are going to attempt the question. Okay. I will be giving the outline, and now, okay, now this would be a very big question to even ask you to write. That's why we'll be doing such an exercise in the next question. Okay. Let's first just discuss the answer of it. The model answer of this I will be putting in my Telegram channel. Okay. The entire written by me. Okay. Now tell me, what would be a good introduction? As usual, Surjit Sinha. That's why I wrote, right? The Surjit Sinha definition of tribal would be the apt. See, you might have come across multiple definitions, and that is why my approach of notes making actually lies. I would be going with the broadest one, the one which could be applicable everywhere. Surjit Sinha I found the most useful one, and that's why I gave it to you. Okay. And then I would be writing in the body how tribal identity has been misconstructed. Tribal identity has been always misconstructed. Okay. Tribal identity have been misconstructed. For that we have 3 points we have written, right? What is the problem in definition of tribal? Right? We have done this. We would be writing that in the and then broadly we have 2 parts in the answer. Adivasi consciousness ka cultural dimension and Adivasi consciousness ka material dimension. Okay. But again, that is where I would like to give you a hint. See, Adivasi consciousness have not been yet defined. So it is your duty, even though if you don't know, to define Adivasi consciousness. Okay. So that it would come the other part of answer, in which you would be defining Adivasi consciousness. I know, like, you have defined tribal, but you would be still going ahead and writing the Adivasi consciousness. Why? Because it's a term in itself, which is going to be used in your later part of the body. And any of the term that you use should not be, written without definition. Okay? Especially if it is a prominent term. And then we are going to talk about the cultural dimension of Adivasi consciousness. So who is the thinker in paper 1 talking about consciousness? Durkheim, right? I mean, of course, that guy would be also talking, but Marx has talked about everything. So you could, close the eyes and always say Marx, you'd be right. But I believe the better one would be Durkheim here, right? The collective consciousness was defined by Durkheim, right? So here, I mean, exactly if it is able to use or not, that would quite depend upon your acumen. However, one of the cultural dimension is of course rituals and rites. The rituals and rites. The cultural dimension of Adivasi consciousness. You are going to fill up with your own example. Can you give an example of rituals performed by Adivasi that you know? Any tribes का तुम लोग को पता है? Yes, perfect. So there they would not be having any material significance, but they would be having a symbolic significance, right? Significance. What's your name? Krishna. Interestingly, I have written also Thorovrian in my answer. Okay. The rites and ritual, the Kula ring, right? Kula ring ek hai. You can study it in Wikipedia also, the Kula ring ceremony, in which that ring, either blue or black or some two color ring, they would be just, you know what you call, giving to in circle, and it would be coming back. It would be signifying nothing other than only symbolic. Okay. What are other cultural, you know what you call dimension? Yes, the totem. Okay, another cultural dimension. Even the traditional medicine and cure, you know, traditional medicine and cure, anything also would come in the cultural dimension. Okay. The cultural dimension also become very much, you know, prominent when the, you know what you call, an external attack is done on the culture. Okay, so it could be the product of reaction to external, reaction to outside culture, reaction to outside culture. Okay, so cultural dimension of Adivasi consciousness might be a product also of the external attack. Okay, some outside, you know, culture is coming, even that could make the, you know, more what you call re-emphasize the cultural identity of Adivasi. Anything that we have left? Birsa Munda rebellion आप लोग ने पढ़ा है? Very famous rebellion. Please go through it, okay? And that again, you know, as I discussed the Santhal rebellion in detail, please go through the Birsa Munda rebellion also pretty much in detail. Any question that is asked, you know, we have discussed 5 type of, you know, what you call tribal movements. This is an example of combination of all 5 types. Okay? Again, I am giving you a very generic example which is applicable everywhere, na? So that's why I am giving you this example as well. The Santhal one is also pretty much generic. Same applies to the Birsa Munda. And pretty much useful, one could easily connect, okay? Not that tough. Because Birsa Munda, you know, what exactly happened in Birsa Munda rebellion is also a reaction to the outside culture. Okay? The missionary activity, right? They would be considered as few people as Satan, the colonial, the money lender, and then the missionary. Right? These 3 people were considered as Satan. And then he calls the Ulgulan, the giant leap forward. Something on that line कुछ इन लोग का पूरा होता है. बहुत epic, मतलब बहुत ही जबरदस्त होता है ये. ठीक है, कहानी पढ़ना मजा आएंगे बहुत. Now we are going to talk about the material dimension. I believe we have mostly covered the cultural dimension, but if there is anything left, please do it. Okay? The material dimension. So tell me, what are the material dimension? Pretty much easy. It's a very famous acronym that is used when it comes to material dimension of Adivasi consciousness. The term used always by one of the guy called Virginius Kaka. That guy was a civil servant, right? If anybody know. This one. Previously, I too used to say Jaja because I didn't know, right? I always didn't know. But I learned from someone it's called Kaka. I was like, seriously? I always learn something. So this guy talks about 3 prominent, acronym which you could actually utilize in your essay, which you could utilize in your what we call this answer, and that is Jal, Jungle, Jameen. These are the 3 material dimensions of Adivasi consciousness. Okay, pretty easy. Jal, Jungle, Jameen. Okay. These are the, pretty much he has what you call summarized the entire material dimension of Adivasi consciousness. Okay. And once you have written the material dimension, I would be writing a current instance before conclusion, right? Current instance. I think everybody might be, what you call aware of this section 124A. What is that? The sedition, right? Bhagavat. किसको पहले दिया गया था? The first guy in India. तिलक से पहले था ना यार, वो चापेकर को लगाया था जो उन्होंने कुछ लिख दिया था वो उसमें ना, रैंड ब्रदर्स के बाद कुछ ऐसा था ना, आई थिंक प्लेग कमिश्नर के अगेंस्ट में उन्होंने कुछ लिखा था, ऐसा कुछ था. सॉरी, अच्छा तो चापेकर ने, the one guys who have written in against the plague commissioner was the first one, and then was the Tilak, and then the famous our father of the nation. Please do read his speech, okay? I always recommend, that Gandhi trial, that trial of sedition is one of the famous speech. Do go through it, okay? He says that, how wonderfully he actually says, he says that, if loving the nation, something on that line, if he says, if loving the nation is a crime, I want the highest penalty to be given to me. So wonderfully he has said, he actually accepts, on his own. The judges also were all, सबको हवा में उड़ा दिया था उसने, इतना मस्त स्पीच दिया था. बट एनीवेज फिर भी इसको जेल हुआ था, ठीक है? दैट इज कॉल्ड लॉ, राइट? रूल ऑफ लॉ. But anyways, do read his speech. It's pretty much good actually. You could even quote it, in some essays to start with. Very wonderful. That's why I'm, saying so. So recently, the Adivasi from which place have got this section 124? किन पे लगाया गया है? आया ना अभी? The Patalgadi movement, जो कर रहे हैं, right? That is happening. So that is the current instance I would have gone with, the Patalgadi movement, to note how people from tribal identity are. Patalgadi movement is an example of assertion of tribal identity. It's an assertion or manifestation of Adivasi consciousness, right? Jal, Jungle, Jameen. उन्हीं लोग के लिए उन लोग लड़ रहे हैं ना यार. Khunti district in Jharkhand. The place name is Khunti district in Jharkhand. Khunti district. Go through it, summarize, at least be ready with the summary of it, okay? It's a very good moment to write. So with this, I might have concluded. Yes, exactly. Even that could come. And then yes, of course, I usually conclude with one, that is tribal pencil. I would just write in single line that tribal pencil is the way forward, done. Nothing else. You want to save identity, you want to save culture, you want development to go for everything. Pencil, okay? And Nehru pencil in foreign relation भी आप लोग पढ़ के रखेंगे, ठीक है? That is also important. See, anything that is theory is always bullshit, right? Implementation is going to matter. But anyway, it has a very good and broad guidelines. The way it has been formulated, basically the last line of that tribal pencil I really liked. Yes, it's an outcome based. You think, just think, up to 1991, or I don't know, like even up to class, 12 5-year plan, I don't think our budget was never outcome based, right? If you see the evolution of budget, it was always input based. How much money you are putting, that used to determine which sector of economy is pretty much important. And at that time, it is 1960s, and a philosophy is being planned, which is outcome based, right? So I felt that it was a very giant leap in terms of our policy formulation, because what exactly is said in the tribal pencil is that it is not the what you call input amount of money, but the character of human that is being generated, and that would determine the success of this. Very wonderfully placed. Okay, something that should be the guideline of nearly all the policy that actually government comes up with. Okay. Okay, right on the next question. It's again from travel, and this we are going to attempt right now again. Okay. Oh, I have one more small theory to give just before, after that only please write it down. Write on the tragedy of commons, the theory of tragedy of commons. Theory of tragedy of commons. It's a pretty popular theory. It is as common as a theory that you could utilize in your essay as well, okay? Anywhere you could utilize. A theory of tragedy of commons. It was given by Garrett Hardin. Just write it down. This theory discusses the impossibility of sustaining commonly held resources, impossibility of sustaining commonly held resources under conditions of rapid development. This theory is pretty much, what are the global commons? I hope everyone is written. What are the global commons? The high seas, right? Outside the EEZ. Then space. Okay. Antarctica. These are the example of global commons. Few of the examples, okay. So basically what this is suggesting is, suppose a resource is held in common. Society is holding some resources in common. Okay. If development is rapid and there is no proper limit on that, then resources is bound to deplete, bound to get to zero. Impossibility of sustainability of a resources if it is held in common. Why? Because people, everybody would like to use it as much as possible, right? So it is bound to deplete. See, this is one of the popular statement of the corollary is what we are more interested in. Write down. Next. There is another side to this phenomenon. Namely, more often than not, those who suffer, are not responsible for the problem. those who suffer are not responsible for the problem. Okay, so basically it says if the resources get depleted, the people who would be suffering the most won't be responsible for actually causing it depletion. Pretty much a normal phenomenon, right? The rich would be depleting the resources, but more affected would be the people who would be suffering in poverty. Similar thing with climate change, everything. A number of instances that is happening in our universe, that is happening on our earth, the global challenges, climatic or environmental side, could be very much explained with this. That's why I gave this theory. Okay. Again, the tribal also are at this problem only, right? The Malkangri hills or the what we call the Bastar, all those Plateau region which is being which is having all this mineral resources, the benefits are not going to these people, right? It is getting exploited by someone else. Again, the resources, everybody, कौन सा article से state natural resources को own करता है? All the natural resources is vested with the state, right? The major minerals. Under which article it has been stated? Okay, that's an homework, okay? It's too, anyway, that would just, remove all the fun out of it. Anyway, write down the next question. I can always tell the articles, right? But that's not fun. What is the nature of the question that we are going to attempt? It is again from tribal communities. What is the nature of religious change among tribal communities? What is the nature of religious change among tribal communities? Illustrate with change among tribal communities. Illustrate with two examples from colonial and post-independence time. Colonial and post-independence time. Okay, so I actually tried to attempt this question again. Why? Because tribal religion has not been exactly, what you call covered in most of the notes or most of the sources. That's why I thought I should be giving something on that part. Okay, so I did something on my own, pretty much, crude it is, but still we are going to write it in points, and you guys are going to help me develop it better. Okay. So religion, which definition you'd use? Durkheim, right? I gave that definition because it was the most general and basic one, which could be applied everywhere. Okay, it's a set of culture practices, something on that line, which creates an idea of reality which is beyond something on that sacred and something on that line, right? So आप religion का definition लेंगे Durkheim से, क्योंकि वो सब जगह applicable है. It is mostly applicable even to tribal identity as well. ठीक है? That's why we are going to use the definition of Durkheim in religion to start with, and that would form the introduction. So it's a 10 marker, so we directly would be shifting to the changes that is occurring. Okay, we won't be too much, moving in the periphery. First change is institutionalization of religion. Institutionalization of religion. The term institutionalization of religion means, like just like church is an institution in Christianity, there would be similar parallel institution developing in the tribal communities. Okay, that is what I meant by term institutionalization of religion that is occurring. I haven't come across exactly what we call example. See, I am from Northeast, so I can exactly give the example, but the thing is that those examples are not documented in popular works. Okay, that's why I'm just choosing not to give an example. Okay, otherwise I can give example of each of this. You can even elaborate on your own that church-like parallel institution are developing in the tribal communities as well. Church-like parallel institution is developing in among tribal communities. Second one is Sanskritization, pretty much popular, and we have M.N. Srinivas or S.C. Dubey or G.S. Ghurye even to say so. Sanskritization. One of the tribe that went with Sanskritization is the Tana Bhagat movement. That was something on the lines of Sanskritization. Okay, you can write the examples. The Tana Bhagat movement. It was among Oravans, पता नहीं कैसे बोलते हैं उसको tribe को. ये tribe था, Oraon. ठीक है? टंग ट्विस्टर है ये सब, और स्पेशली मेरे लिए तो और भी ज्यादा. There is a phenomenon of sacred groves that we have learned in the environment, right? So on that phenomenon, many times, what we call, there would be reaction, or there would be so much, what we call movement only to protect their nature, because that is sacred for them. Okay, so you could just write movement in lines of protecting natural environment which is sacred. Movement in lines of protecting natural environment that is sacred. Okay, again something off the Okay, so now we are going to add few more points, and that is the what you call exchange between little and great tradition that is occurring. Constant exchange between little and great tradition. Constant exchange between little and great tradition. See here, the little tradition would be the tribal religion, and the great tradition would be anything. It is not necessary that Sanskritization would be something that is related to the Hinduism. Okay, that is, but in little and great tradition is a broader term in which we would be even talking about how tribes, for example, 93% of tribes in Lakshadweep is a Muslim majority, right? But 93% is scheduled tribe also at the same time. So their interaction would be tribals and Muslims. Northeast you come, around 80% would be Christianity. So here interaction is happening between Christianity and tribals, okay? And then in other areas, popular example would be the Sanskritization or Hinduism, okay? I hope everyone is getting why I have written as a distinct point. You could write another change that is happening is organized in decline in organized form of religion. Another change that is happening is next point. Decline in organized form of religion. If PETA comes to know about my friends, they would be like, seriously, get shocked, you know, the kind of things that we do. See, organized form of religion is a religion, you know, what we call, not exactly organized, I think community form of religion. Please, change the organized to community. See, from a group-based activity, it is now declining to individual activity. That is what I am trying to say. Okay? So, community-based जो है, activity based था, जो community based activity था religion का, even among tribals, is now secluding to private realm. Okay. Okay, tell me another some other things that change is occurring that you guys could notice. Any? So please add on your own, okay? Try to add on your own. It has asked us to talk about two such instances from, so one instance from pre-independence, one instance from post-independence, right? The instance that would be giving, the first one would be the Birsa Munda from pre-independence, and that you guys are going to do on your own. The second one I'm going to discuss, okay? Birsa Munda pretty much popular, you know, you can get it from anywhere, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, is it changing? Because barter system is actually prevalent, right? I'm talking about the change. See, again, one of the exercise that you guys could do on your home is that chalk out the prominent characteristic of religion in tribal. Animism would be something, naturalism would be something. I hope everyone is getting, we can use the thinkers in paper pretty much easily in this. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I actually wrote this, but I actually couldn't, elaborate it. That's why I was just leaving it. Ban on superstition. State is interfering to ban on this superstition form of what we call rituals. I believe one of the popular example was, I believe, in one temple in South India is that where meal would be served, and then what we call, after the people have eaten, after the people have already eaten it, then people would be rolling on that meal, the leftovers, something on that, and that has been banned. Sorry? Yes, for that only. I believe it came in Hindu, very popular example, okay? So that's why I'm just saying. I'm unable to recollect that name, but that was happening, okay? On the leftover plate, people have to roll themselves, okay? When I got jaundice for the first time, in my place, pretty much, different scenario, So I visited, my dad took me to 3 superstitious people, like 3, black magic people. In our place, it's called Miri, M-I-R-I, okay? Miri is very powerful. I don't know if I'm saying so from a scientific bent of mind. I have to say because I've seen what they could do, okay? But anyways, it was pretty much fun. Okay, the first one, as I said, would be the Birsa Munda, right? You are yet to complete. Change has been written. Then the Birsa Munda one for the pre-independence. The second one would be the, what you call conversion in Northeast. I do want to emphasize on this because I want to actually talk about this from my own perspective. Okay, that's why I have took this. That examples from post-independence में आप लोग conversion in Northeast could be a popular example, which I'm going to discuss with you. Okay. I'm elaborate with you. See, what exactly is happening in this is that Christianity is spreading very fast. That is not, something that is not false, okay? That is the accepted truth in Northeast, okay? But what is happening is a hybrid form of religious practices is coming, in which people would be simultaneously, what we call going for their own faith, the tribal faith, as well as they would be visiting church as well. So they won't be, I believe that is not in line with the Sanskritization. That is not even, can we explain with little and great tradition, because no interaction is properly happening. It is only people have now what we call went with multiple faith at the same time, okay? So I don't know even there could be a term for this or not, but you could just write in short that unique phenomenon that is occurring in Northeast. Unique phenomenon that is occurring in Northeast is that tribals continue to practice their own faith. Tribals continue to practice their indigenous faith. Tribals continue to practice their indigenous faith, and at the same time embrace Christianity by visiting church. Embrace Christianity by visiting church. One of the ways, through which, actually this missionary activity occurs is that it is said that, what we call, like in our place, local wine is pretty much popular, okay? Everybody just drinks it. So, and someone goes a bit, way ahead in such a, what we call activity. So as a result of which, this Christianity would come, the father would say that you, what we call, embrace Christianity, because Christianity would means you should be a teetotaler, and that is, faith. That is how conversion actually takes place. One of the most popular way in which it is, expanding or it is happening is that people, have to leave their traditional drinking, especially those people who have been doing it way too much beyond what tradition has also asked to do. Okay. So we have finished the tribal one. Okay, I believe we have attempted good number of questions as well. So you guys have to complete this. Okay, if anything else, then you have to write it down. How much time is left? I was thinking of finishing few more things. Okay, so we are still going to finish the population dynamics. Okay, you guys have to embrace me for more 15-20 minutes. We are still going to finish it because it's very important. Population dynamics is another important chapter in which question could be anticipated but rarely visited by any other. I mean, usually what happens in other is that, paper 1 will be somewhere 80% of the course, and then suddenly paper 2 will just finish. You won't even know it has been finished, okay? Anyway, we are going to cover the population dynamics, in which I am going to talk about two popular theory, which is pretty much important, okay? Which will help you to write the answers at any cost. I don't have any concrete questions for it. However, we are going to discuss it, okay? It's an important topic. Okay, the theory on population growth theories. Population growth theories. Okay, the first theory is the Malthus one. The Malthus, the most popular one, right? What exactly it says? Yes. Population would increase in geometric progression, and resources or food primarily would be increasing in arithmetic progression. Henceforth, resources required to support a certain, what we call size of population would become insufficient, henceforth leading to death, famine, plague, whatever it has said. So basically, according to this theory, it is resources that limit population growth. Okay, one of the exact statement if you want to write, it would be, according to this theory, resources is what that limit population growth. Resources limit population growth. Since it's sociology, we would also write the Marxist perspective on population growth. See, basically whatever Marx has said is on the science of, see, what he's going to say, population growth is also what doing only one thing, that is perpetuating the class interest. Okay, more population, less bargaining power, poverty would be high, people would be just serving the dominant class. Okay, you could just write population growth serves the serves and perpetuate the class interest. Serves and perpetuate the class interest. Pretty much self-explanatory, right? When it comes to Marxists, serves and perpetuate the class interest. The third one, which you guys are doing to do on your own, but it is pretty much important, and the most important is the demographic transition theory. Demographic transition theory. Okay, there's a big curve with 5 stages. Pretty much but self-explanatory, I believe, right? Birth rate would be plotted somewhere on that line, death rate would be plotted, and then the entire theory is there. I hope everyone is familiar with this demographic transition theory, right? It's pretty much easy to understand also. I don't think I should be explaining it. But till yet, this one is the most popular theory which could actually explain. And do actually go through this theory and try to identify in which stage India is today. Okay? 5 stage है, कौन सा stage में India है वो आपको बताना है मुझे, ठीक है? Okay, now we are going to study the theory David and Blake population study. David and Blake population study. Important, it's also the part of syllabus. See, it is going to talk about fertility. Okay? This study is going to talk about fertility. Okay? What are the parameters that actually is going to determine the fertility of a respective population? Okay? I'm going to make a small diagram which you guys are going to follow it, and then I'm going to explain it. Okay? just write down. I hope everyone has completed the diagram, right? Okay, let's just write down. David and Blake constructed intermediate fertility variables. David and Blake constructed intermediate fertility variables. Intermediate fertility variables to describe the biological and behavioral mechanism. Intermediate fertility variables to describe the biological and behavioral mechanism. Biological and behavioral mechanism through which social, economic and cultural condition can affect fertility. See, this is the process of reproduction, okay? Process of reproduction would be consisting of 3 stages, okay? That 3 stages has been, what you call, David and Blake would be, constructing intermediate fertility variable. Such intermediate fertility variable would be 11. 11 such intermediate fertility variable they have created, okay? And that, how it is going to vary in underdeveloped and developed society, that is we are going to write in the conclusion. I hope everyone is getting this diagram. The social, cultural and economic factors would be, what you call, impacting the behavioral and biological mechanism of all these 3 processes, all these 3 stages, okay? That 3 stages he has constructed, these 2 people have constructed to study using 11 such variable called as the 11 intermediate fertility variables, and how it is going to impact the fertility is going to be discussed, okay? I'm just going to make a distinction and going to very much, it's going to get pretty much easy, okay? In underdeveloped, you can just write it is early union. Okay, see, the first stage, the first variable, there is a chance among, what you call underdeveloped to have a early union, okay? Thus such a thing could exist. What kind of control they can use in case of early union is control, you could just write control. Second point, control, but not deliberate fertility control measures. Second point is control, but not deliberate fertility control measures. The popular contraceptive that is available when it comes to the developed society, I hope everybody knows that there was a study, what we call, there was a study, I believe it came in economic survey, in which the fertility rates of a educated family and fertility rates of a non-educated family pretty much differed. It was referring to the women education in that. If you go through that economic survey, it is written what could be the probable fertility rate in an educated mother household and non-educated, okay? So I'm just referring to that only. When it comes to underdeveloped society, it could be having early union. There could be some form of control, but this kind of control would be superstitious or abstinence on their own, okay? Asceticism on their own. But it is not going to be the deliberate fertility control measure. The popular contraceptive, they might not be going for, okay? The third one, control at the parturition stage. You could just write, they exercise control at parturition. Parturition is a process of giving birth. Parturition stage. Control at the parturition. Parturition is a process of delivery. So In underdeveloped one, they would be going for greater control. They won't be going for control at this stage. They would be going at the control at this stage. That is what exactly is I'm trying to emphasize, and that's why this very debate, where is this, you could use the very debate of safe and legal abortion. In that debate also you could use. Why? Because it is going to be the lower strata that is going to impact greater if they do not have this option, right? Because David and Blake study already says that control in underdeveloped or lower strata happens at the parturition stage, and henceforth safe and legal abortion is more important for such section. I hope everyone is following this, right? Here you could just write in the developed column, low values for variables near early stages of reproduction. Second point, low values for early stages of reproduction. Second point, achieved a lower fertility rate, by not having low values for all intermediate fertility variable. Low values for all intermediate fertility variable. This is one of the major conclusion of this study, is that there are 11 variables. There might be an instance in which 6 only you have achieved low. In the other, if it could be high, but still overall, the overall fertility rate could be low. So it is not necessary that you have to achieve what we call low values in all of the variable. There could be some variable in which you are achieving it low, that would be safe for the society. That is the important conclusion of this, okay? So with this, the class is ending, okay? That are the popular conclusion of, I believe you could utilize it at multiple places, and that's why I've shared this theory, okay? No need to go through this theory in detail from any of the sources because it's pretty much exhaustive in itself. Thank you.